Book report. It's a book report. It's a book report about a movie. 'Cause that makes sense. Oh my God, we're back. Can you believe it?
I can't believe
Alex,
it.
it's been so long.
I know.
It's been so long, dude.
It's been too long, yeah.
I think as we're recording this, we haven't had an episode in 2 weeks, but we haven't recorded anything in like a month or something.
Yeah.
Due to various things, Jefferson got his COVID. That was not the best. And then just hasn't worked out. But hopefully we're back on track.
I've been moving.
You've been moving. But today we're doing a book report, Alex and I, to be followed hopefully quite soon by a full episode. But we prepared for this one a while ago. It's called High Life.
Yeah.
I had seen this movie, and I chewed on it for a while, and then I was like, how do I want to present this? Because I knew I wanted to talk about it with you guys, but I was like, I don't know if it'll make a full episode, like a full good episode, and also I didn't know if Jeff would even, I didn't know how he'd react to this movie. Mm-hmm. But it felt like an Alex movie. Oh, definitely.
I mean, it's pretty slow, which I liked. It's beautiful, which I liked. Like, it's a very, very pretty movie. It's very intense.
Yeah.
Like, it... I don't want to say, like, Lars von Trier intense, but I wanted to ask you, actually, how did you, find out about this movie? How did you stumble on it?
I think I was, looking up Robert Pattinson movies, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know, looking through things he was doing, because I got interested in him lately, because he's going to be Batman. And he did, I don't know, he did Tenet. We were a fan of his acting in Tenet.
Yeah, I thought he was great in that movie.
And I looked at this, and it was interesting watching it, because I knew nothing about this movie. All I saw was the poster, and I was like, Robert Pattinson and a daughter in space. And that's all I knew about it. And if you're gonna watch it, I think that's the way to go in. I wouldn't recommend watching a trailer or anything like that. Going cold. But, it's a movie that's not for everybody. Definitely. If you go into, the IMDb, there are some insanely angry people in, the user reviews.
I can feel
angry.
That. I can feel where that comes from.
Sensationally angry. Whoa, settle down. Because it's okay. I think if you like a slow, weird movie that isn't about, a kinetic plot, and you're okay with a movie making you uncomfortable, I think you should watch High Life and then come back. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. I think that's a really good assessment of the film. I also think I kept thinking of Moon, because we did an episode on Moon, right? And so
we did.
It was I had the same kind of feelings of isolation and a one-man kind of show of an actor, and then I don't know, it played a trick on me. I think this movie was kind of cynical. I mean, we were talking about Barry Lyndon and, the pessimism and the cynical aspect of that movie. And this movie, if I can steal kind of an idea from a reviewer or a critic that I saw online, they said it was kind of like a take on Interstellar and, The Martian, that wasn't so full of hope and positivity. It was a little more drab and a little more of a more cynical look at the future of space technology, right? Is it always going to be this big pioneering movement and push, or is it going to be, are we going to use it to send criminals into space forever, right?
for Fallout style science experiments?
Oh, I know, right?
Did you get that vibe? I got that vibe when they got to they found that other ship, and they're he goes in and it's it's full of dogs.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the shit is going on here? And then it clicked in my brain. It's they sent up all these different ships, these different box style ships for different experiments. So they were Fallout vaults.
Yeah, it is like the vaults. It's when you find when you find a vault out in the wilderness, and you're you finally learn how to open it. You finally get the object or do the mission to open the door, and you have no idea what's going to be behind there. And I was actually kind of freaked out in that scene, because I was like, are there people? And then I saw the dog run by, and I was like, Oh no.
Dude, this movie kept me. I didn't know what it was. At first I was like, okay, what's this boring movie about Robert Pattinson like making coffee in space? And then it turned into just this thing, like maybe 20 minutes in, and then I was like on the edge of my seat the entire movie, even though there's no plot. I was just like really drawn in by this. I don't know, like I would call it like not a meditation exactly, but maybe an exploration of human sexuality and trauma and death. And to do all of these things at like the edge of a black hole or like out in the infinity of space is super interesting. And I think it's doing all these different things that are really evocative for certain viewers, even if there's not like a movie story going on, you know? So that's where I think that Interstellar point you brought up is interesting. Because it's like, yeah, it in certain ways it's pushing boundaries that Interstellar would never dare push because people wouldn't watch it.
It's it's like darker themes than I watched this movie once by myself, and then I watched it again with my girlfriend, and she said something while we were watching it, and she was like, "This is like The Witch," because she kept saying this movie's weird. But not like weird as in like, ooh, this movie's weird and kind of trippy, but like as in this movie is dealing with themes that are very heavy and very unsettling and very unexpected when it comes to the sci-fi genre sometimes, you know. And with The Witch, with like the horror genre, you don't usually have this underlying theme of a woman growing into herself and into her body, going through puberty, and her little brother like getting sexually turned on by her, but not knowing why, right? They're just out in the wilderness of like this.
Wait, who was the little brother? Wait, what are you talking about?
In The Witch.
In The Witch. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was like, you could have been talking about High Life.
Well, no, I mean,
until
in
you
High
got
Life,
to that.
In High Life, there's the scene with Robert Pattinson and his daughter Willow when they're sleeping together, or she like crawls into bed next to him, and it's because they're the only human contact in literally thousands of light years or miles or whatever, you know. Yeah. And there's blood on the bed. And there's blood on her underwear, and she like touches herself, and she realizes that she's like going through her first period. And it's like, you're like, what is this movie trying to do? You know, because like that is like evocative, going to the word that you
oh my
used.
God. And that's after a whole lot of other stuff.
Exactly. That's like more towards the end of the film.
Yeah, that's more towards the end. The film is bookended with him dealing with her as a baby, and they're the only two left on this ship. And then after the whole middle segment, which is like him, I don't know, how would you like describe this? It's him with a bunch of other people and a doctor. And they're doing like sexual experimentation on them to learn about pregnancy in the vast reaches of space. And it like really doesn't pull punches regarding the unglamorous nature of the human body. Really? It's like you see fucking Mia Goth like douching herself, and then things like that. Like there's one of the most fucked up attempted rapes I've seen in a movie in a long time.
It's definitely not trying to put the sex in the film to be sexy, right? It's like not that vibe when it comes to it. It gets almost base and like bestial.
It's not eroticism. It's like raw sexuality. It's like primal. Humans are creatures.
Yes.
And like we have to deal with these creature things.
I mean, the whole idea of like the recycling of the urine and the feces, you know, and the plants. I just want to say really quick too, the plant room was awesome. I would have loved building that room as a prop designer, and I would have loved just being in there as a prisoner astronaut. Like,
you would have been like the black guy who just slept in
I would have been like Andre 3000, right?
Oh yeah, that's who that was.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
But I loved that room for some reason, like all the kale and the little like cherry tomatoes growing here and there, and like the different herbs, and that looked like the most peaceful room, at least to me, in the vessel.
Did you get like Garden of Eden vibes from that? I feel like there's got to be something going on there.
I mean,
but I'm not sure what.
It could be. There's so much going on with this movie that
there's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you brought up Lars von Trier earlier, before we got into like the proper discussion here, but I think that is maybe the closest analog I could talk about is like Antichrist. Because I watched this movie having no idea what it would be, and when it turned into like, I hesitate to call it sexual horror, because it's not horror in the sense of like there's a monster or anything. It's just like the real dark depths of human psychology horror, which is to me more horrifying than any monster you can create. So like the lengths this movie goes to, it, I don't know, it really got under my skin in a way that I can only like draw a comparison to something like Antichrist by Lars von Trier.
So did you like it then? Did you like the way that it got under your skin and made you feel uncomfortable?
I loved it.
Oh, okay.
It's weird. It's a hard movie to say you enjoyed it. Like you enjoyed it. It's a hard movie to say you enjoy watching, but if you're okay with art being open-ended and pointing to all these different things and just making you feel, right? Like I don't think any movie has ever made me feel in the exact way that this did. The things that it evoked in me, I don't think any movie ever has. Antichrist is, like I said, it's the closest analog. But it's like the and then I don't know. Did you feel that as well?
Oh, definitely.
Did it get under your skin like that?
I want to say Juliette Binoche did a great job of that. She was so uncomfortably just disgusting. I don't know, and like maternalistic, and it makes it even more ironically gross and horrific when you find out she murdered her children and her husband.
Yeah, and you're like, now you're doing these like fucking sex experiments.
She's obsessed
in the
with
edge
fertility,
of space,
right? And like, yeah, it's just fucking insanity.
It's insanity, and it barely makes sense. Is the thing? It's like if you really want to go deep and analyze like the structure of this, I could see why a certain brain would get really fucking annoyed really quickly, because you're like, what is going on here?
It could be so many different stories when you look at the plot construction.
But then it's like there's this throwaway scene where they go back to Earth for 2 minutes, and it's like two people on a train talking about the moral ambiguity or like the moral question of sending criminals from death row up to space to do these experiments. And then like the end goal is like what? To measure a black hole? Is that what it is? But at the same time they're doing fertility experiments?
Yeah, see that's what I didn't understand, was that like Dr. Dibbs, is that her name? The doctor that was doing the fertility experiments, she seemed to have some weird like authority, but also she was a prisoner. And yet the main goal of the crew was to like experiment or measure somehow the physiological effects of a black hole on the human body.
I don't know, Alex.
I mean, who else better to do it than like a cadre of prisoners, right? Like they're the perfect guinea pigs. Like this is their payment. This is their comeuppance for justice. So, I mean, I guess when you think about it in those terms, it's better than having them rot in a 4x4 cell somewhere out in the California desert with our tax-paying money. I guess it's like, but
you're like, what?
That's like, what makes this movie so dark.
What's her authority here? Like, why don't they just like revolt? Like there's no other guards. I mean,
that's what makes this movie dark.
That's where you just have to like let a part of your logical mind go when it comes to this movie. You're just like, okay, just let that go and focus on the other things, because it's not about the plot. It's not about telling a story. It kind of is. It's about telling a certain kind of narrative, but that narrative isn't a story. It's like it's just drawing upon all these different themes.
There was a part of the movie that I really enjoyed, but I'm still really confused by. And
okay,
there are scenes that actually, they go back to Earth a few times, and there are like scenes of like youthful kids that are all dirty riding the trains.
Yeah, one of
And-
those was Mia Goth. She
Yeah,
was the one
right?
riding the trains, and then I believe the kid with the dog is Robert Pattinson.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
Because later in the film, his daughter says, like, I read your files. You killed your friend over a dog.
Oh, okay, because every time I watched the film, I watched it twice, and I thought it was, he said over a job.
No.
Some
no,
auditory
dog.
dyslexia for you.
Yeah, I guess so. You got to turn it up, man.
I know, seriously. Yeah, okay. So those scenes looked like they were filmed with film, like analog, and they did a really good job of making it seem like it was from a different time. Like it looked like a film that could have been filmed in the 1970s.
It looks like it was
1980s,
shot
like-
on VHS to me.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
it looked old, but it was pretty. There were some shots in it that reminded me of like why I loved Barry Lyndon.
That's so interesting. Let's pause on that.
Okay, yeah.
Because
yeah.
like I found this movie to be ugly,
oh,
but
what?
intentionally ugly. You know, like, and I can't.
Actually,
it's been a
I
while since I
agree.
watched it. I mean, it's beautiful in the sense that it's really well made and really intentional in the way that it's constructed and the way that shots are constructed. I mean, I have not seen a movie from Claire Denis before, but she's been making abstract French cinema for 30 years. I'm going to assume she knows what she's doing. And so does her cinematographer.
Oh shit! Wow, I
yeah.
did not know that about her.
Yeah, she's been making movies. Her first movie, let's see here, is from 1988. It's called Chocolat. It's not the Johnny Depp movie. It's
Okay,
something
I was
else.
like, wait, I've seen that.
No, it's not the one with Johnny Depp eating chocolate.
Also
Although-
with Juliette Binoche.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. So there's your anagram for the day. What do they call that? Not anagram.
Anachronism.
What's that thing? No, not anachronism. I don't know. Were you like... Oh, God, I'm so dumb.
The 7
one where you
degrees
like-
of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Exactly. Only distilled and bad. Oh, man. Yeah, but I mean, I originally watched it because it was a Robert Pattinson movie, and I was like, oh, I like Robert Pattinson. I also saw, of course, that it had a low user score and a high critic score, and that got me interested because I'm a douche. You know? That's always an indicator. It's always an indicator. Usually an indicator.
Yeah, I mean,
What were we talking about?
we were talking about Claire Denis,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
also just like overall the lack of narrative structure in this film. And I guess you're right. Okay, so there are shots. You were talking about how it was actually kind of ugly.
Yeah, the
But-
visual style.
There are shots when they're inside the vessel that I'll agree with you are strange. Like there's shots of the plant room, of the vegetable room, where it'll just be like the vent. It'll just be like the camera focused on the vent for a second. They just fix the camera to the ground. It's like 2 feet above the ground. It's just shooting at the vent. And you see some like kale leaf with some condensation on it just shaking for a moment. It's so weird because the lack of linear camera work and the lack of linear editing totally mimics the lack of, narrative structure in the movie.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's what makes the ugliness work, I feel like.
Well, you make a good point in saying the ugliness inside the ship, and I think that's to service the elements of human ugliness and the fact that you're dealing with like really ugly emotions and really ugly, ugly body processes, but also beautiful ones because you're talking about the creation of life as well. But when it shifts over into like its more abstract mode, when it is more focused on what's outside the ship, the universe, it becomes beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. There's this one shot of the black hole, I believe. Maybe it's a nebula. It could have been. My memory's a little hazy. I watched it some time ago now.
I think it's the
But
black hole.
I think it's the black hole, and it's like that's a womb. You look at it, and it absolutely conjures a womb in your mind's eye. And so there's something to be said about, like, what is this flirting with, this film, right? What is this film flirting with? Is it flirting with the idea that, like, all of creation is somehow like tied into life, you know? Like, I don't know, it gets weird. It gets metaphysical, but it gets metaphysical without saying it. It's like the black hole as a womb, and then you have this tiny box filled with people like going through these insane experiments, just hurtling through the void. I don't know what it's saying, Alex. I haven't distilled it into like my quote for Rotten Tomatoes. You know, I haven't done that yet.
You would be remiss to ignore the reproductive theme and the sexual themes in this film, right? Because those are the most like conspicuous ones, and the most the ones that are like
pretty
there.
Immense.
I mean, Juliette Binoche's character even says, I think at one point, she says, "I'm obsessed with reproduction," and it's this dark take, in my opinion, on like technology, which sounds kind of boring and stale because it's like, yeah, we've had that forever in sci-fi, but this is different. It's
how do you mean technology?
What if we used money and resources for space what if space exploration turned out to just be incredibly bland, and it was like we use the money for garbage disposal and for criminal experiments, and in its own sense it's like it brings up the morality of imprisonment and incarceration in general, which I think is another theme of the film, because men and women get raped and sexually violated every day in prison, and it's like so socially accepted. And like,
dude, we make jokes about it.
I was gonna say sometimes it's even wished upon, you know, when you're watching like a court case and it's like really vile and the defendant's just a really bad person, and you just find yourself wishing that like the worst things on this person. And I think it was like a commentary on how we feel about just prisoners in general. Like, are felonies or like felonious peoples?
Felons? Is that the word?
Yeah.
The word you're looking for?
I was like trying to find like a more concise
this is an absolute English major nerd right here, by the way. Like moment where it's like you're taking the root word and using all the tangents that can go off of it, but not the root word.
Exactly.
Felonious? Felonizations?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Nah, man, felons.
Yeah, so it's like it's like, how do we feel about them, really? You know, like, we don't let them vote. We don't, like, we just had that. There was a woman who went to prison for 5 years, ladies and gentlemen, for 5 years for trying to vote without knowing that,
shouldn't
like,
have tried to vote.
A felony conviction, you know, made her ineligible. You think
that's crazy?
You think that our system would be like a little more like less gotcha than that? It would be more like, hey, you can't vote, sorry, see you later. Instead it's like,
I don't know, but she was probably poor. She was probably poor, and like she'll make more money for these systems like going to prison than being outside of it. I hate to be that cynical, but hey, we're talking high life. It's a cynical movie.
Yeah, I mean,
or is it? I don't know.
I mean, the end, if we get to the very end, like,
we do want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I do also want to talk to you about the sex box.
Oh my!
We got to talk about the fuck box.
Yeah, we do actually.
Because what in the Christ, Alex? what is that? What is? They never explain it. You see it like
box
working with Juliette Binoche in like this really, like, one of the most erotic single person sex scenes in cinematic history.
Oh, definitely.
That's also like, I don't know, it was like arousing, but also incredibly off-putting.
Yeah, it was.
That's what I mean about this movie, like taking you places, and that's like to the point. I'll say my critic thing here, where it's like, that's what good art should do. It takes you uncomfortable, interesting places. But yeah, fuck box. Speak.
Oh my God. I mean, so
what the hell?
You get the gist of it scientifically, right? It fits into it tracks with the sci-fi plot of the movie, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, that makes sense. They're like inseminating themselves, but then you realize they're not.
Is that what it? I don't.
No.
It's not that.
You realize that you're not inseminating yourselves with this machine. It's purely there for pleasure and leisure. And when Juliette Binoche's character uses it, like, the seat is like this reddish like leather, but in her mind I feel like it turns into this like furry animal beast type thing.
Yeah, it becomes her like riding a bull.
Yeah, it's seemingly used by everyone in the ship except for Monty, who is Robert Pattinson's character. He like refuses to give up his fluids, he says.
Yeah, they call him the monk.
The monk, yeah, that is what they call him. So
Yes. Yeah, Alex, like, give us a really detailed explanation of what's going on here, please.
well, it's like a little bicycle seat. It looks like a little kayak seat, right? With like a slot where like a metal dildo phallus-like object comes up. But what I really wanted to know was they didn't show the male version of the fuck box.
I had that thought as well. I was
How
like,
did the male use it?
Is that tattooed guy gonna just get dildoed to death right now? Like,
do they just have to be down with like prostate massage from the back door? Like, that's just what it is now, I guess. They're like, oh, okay. It'd be like having the only restroom on the ship be just a urinal, right?
Weird scene. Yeah.
The tattooed guy was interesting.
It's funny. I watched what's it called? Burn After Reading. Shortly after that, do you remember George Clooney's little invention?
Exactly.
His little garage invention in that.
It's like a little precursor, like a little historical artifact or something. Like George Clooney in this universe, High Life and Burn After Reading are connected, and he was the guy who invented the fuck box.
I'd watch that movie. It's like a version of what's that movie where Benedict Cumberbatch like builds a machine? What's that movie called? The Imitation Game?
Yeah, where
it's
he's
like that,
but it's Turing.
But it's George Clooney just building a like a high-tech dildo machine for space exploration.
Dude, do you know how fucking funny that would be? And it's
directed
like,
by
it's
the
to
Coens.
prevent like the Russian invasion of Ukraine and like World War III. It's like super high stakes.
Getting hot button topics, man. That might have happened by the time this goes out.
I know, you never really know.
Thoughts and prayers, even though I hate that statement, but I don't know. I feel bad.
War is hell, man. War is hell. And
but we'll let that go. Yeah. It's not the focus of this podcast. So did you okay, so the structuring is weird. You have the first part, which is him with the baby daughter, and then the middle part, which is him and everyone else, and you see some people die. Like there are some accidents. The rapist guy gets just curb stomped basically, and then the pilot and Mia Goth, something happens with them. Like Mia Goth is like, screw this place, I am out of here.
Yeah.
So she brains the pilot with a wrench and takes the little starship into the void.
And then you see her get spaghettied.
A really cool like visual
spaghetti sci-fi.
And then it just cuts back to Robert Pattinson and his daughter, and I was very confused the first time I saw this because he looks exactly the same. And this is a critique I definitely have, where it's like they just gave him the tiniest patch of like gray hair,
and then it got bigger.
And when I saw her, she didn't look that young the first time I saw her. I was like, is that just one of these people?
Yeah, who you never noticed?
Because the way that it's edited, it's just like, you're just there. It's like it jumps forward 20 years, but it doesn't tell you that. And visually, it didn't tell me that either. Did that happen for you as well?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
It took me a little while to figure out that, this is his grown-up daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I get it.
At first, I thought it was that the older Willow was like you said, I thought it was a crewmate that I had just misplaced before, that I didn't see. Because when we see him disposing of all the bodies, you don't see everyone's face, and like you don't really know how many bodies he's dumping out of the vessel. So
I'm still unclear onto why he was doing that or how they all died. Or
I think it was to save weight.
Right.
It was to save weight and to save like resources and electricity,
so that they can make it to a black hole and die.
Yes.
See, this is where once again it's like I get it. People who don't like this movie, I kind of get it.
I don't know. Instead of like the ride off into the sunset, it's like the ride off into the black hole, like the event horizon, I guess, with the daughter that was conceived out of rape, There's no other way to really put
Out
it.
of well, yeah, she the Nazi doctor lady. She's not a Nazi, but that's what we'll call her. She jerks off Robert Pattinson while he's drugged and asleep. Uses his man batter, his pancake man batter, to inseminate Mia Goth, who then gives birth and then steals a ship and goes into a black hole.
I mean, that scene was crazy. She was just walking down the hallway with her hand like full of jizz. She just had like a cupped hand, Juliette Binoche, and she walked into the bedroom with it and just was like, "Okay, here we go."
It's
and
the best movie jizz I've seen since The Green Knight.
There was also the scene with Willow's mother, where she's like lying in bed and she's like drenched in what looks like breast milk.
Oh yeah.
I'm presuming that's because like Juliette Binoche has taken the daughter effectively and like.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So like her body's producing milk but has nowhere to go.
Exactly. It's like I said, it's this weird. It's just like making you feel the raw animal like horror of being an animal, of being a human, and we are animals, and that's part of it. It's like, yeah, like the agony of like post childbirth, having that ripped away from you, like your body reacting to that, and like just leaking milk all over yourself. Ugh. Like you said before, there's also the period. You see period blood. You see people douching, trying to like not have this lady do experiments on them or get pregnant. It's wild. It is fucking wild. And it's also, but it's like, we're also making this movie sound more exciting than it is. I feel
yeah,
maybe it depends on you. And it's, I mean, granted, I think if you've gotten this far into this conversation, you've watched High Life. I'm just going to take that for granted.
Yeah. It's so Antichrist, going to Lars von Trier and that connection. Yeah. Antichrist makes you feel sexually uncomfortable, but in a sexually uncomfortable way that's like, there's some sexiness to it, right? Like there's something, I don't know, they're like sex addicts, right? They can't stop having sex with each other, so they're like having sex when their child dies, right? Like, we won't get into the plot of Antichrist, but there's this aspect to it where it's like, it's adult consensual sex between two people.
There's more like legit eros in there. There's like people exactly. Like wanting to have sex, perfect as opposed to like artificially inseminate or rape in the case of the tattooed guy.
High Life is more primal reproduction, biological sex themes, like body fluids, menstrual blood, semen, saliva.
I mean, Antichrist, you also see Willem Dafoe's erect cock ejaculate blood. That's one of my favorite things to say about that movie. So, and that's not a joke. It's in Antichrist. So, thumbs up for Antichrist.
Yeah, see, like even that, like there's something more like you said, more eros about that. Whereas this is just like, this had like the vibe of like, this is what the amniotic sac fluid would feel like, just in a movie form, right? It's like,
yeah, it's like not glorified at all. There's no glorification of anything in this movie. Lots of
stuff that is left unexplained that you could just kind of fill in yourself. There's lots of stuff that's I'm still left like kind of flabbergasted as to not why they showed it. The movie does a really good job of being economical, but more of like, what is the implication of this on the plot?
Like what?
There are scenes like where Juliette Binoche will be standing in front of like an air vent and she's like cooling her body down after her hot session with the fuck box. But and then the captain, you know, the guy who has the stroke when he's on the bike, he like comes up to her and he presumably mouths like, "I want to fuck you."
He says suck my dick.
Oh. Okay.
Oh wait, no, that's after he has the stroke. He says that to her. My bad.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Was he the captain? Realize. I thought he was just like another dude.
They called him the captain, but like,
I
have honestly no idea. But
okay.
That guy like comes up to her and they like embrace for a moment, and then she like coyly like pushes him away. But then tattoo guy is there like voyeuring out, just like jacking it, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like,
it's true.
And so that whole sequence, I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Is that like setting up his like desire to just like
to be a raper?
Go ham? Yeah, to go ham on the other girls. Like,
I think that's part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think functionally that's what it's doing. I'm sure there's like more layers you could tease out if you wanted to, apropos like Juliette Binoche's character.
Such an interesting movie though, and definitely A24, right?
It's definitely A24. It's definitely interesting. It's definitely not for everybody. It's one of those movies where it's not only not for everybody, it's barely for anybody. But it's for us. I knew you would dig it. I don't know. I hoped you would dig it. I tend to like we tend to think generally the same things and have like pretty similar experiences with movies. It does, change though. Like I did not like The Beach.
Is nice. Right. Like where it's like the net of tolerance is nice. Where it's like if you could imagine a fishing net. When I suggest movies to you, I know I can cast like a very wide net, and probably catch some or peak something in the movie lover of you that will be like, there's something about this, that. I mean, you didn't totally hate The Beach, I don't think.
No. See, the thing is like, even when you've recommended things I don't like, they're always interesting.
Yeah.
Even Funny Games, which I fucking loathed, was interesting. It's like, I haven't forgotten that movie. It's not like you recommended Uncharted to me or something,
Man.
Like,
is it out yet? Did you see it?
Yeah, no, I have not seen it.
Oh, man.
I made fun of it ruthlessly in my Tragedy of Macbeth review, though. Which, by the way, if you're starved for more Reel Weirdos content, there's more on the Jammo Risin channel. I do my own stuff as well. I'll leave a link below. Check it out. I should have done that at the beginning, but I'll do it next time.
Whatever.
Just by the way.
It's so Reel Weirdos to just plug it real quick in 38 minutes.
Yeah. It's like to have no structure to our talk whatsoever. It's like that comment we got on the Man on Fire episode. What was it? It's like these guys. What a lot of unnecessary talk by the presenters of this clip.
It's funny because I feel like out of a lot of the episodes we've done, we talked about the filmmaking a lot with that movie. We talked about the writing. I think it's
because we talked about other stuff for like 15 minutes.
I think it's because we hated it too.
If you want people to get to the point, we're not the people to listen to. I don't know. Like, I don't know what you're coming in expecting. You gotta just be like, I don't know. We're having fun. We're friends talking to each other about movies.
Yeah,
that's what we do. If you want to hear like a dry, factual program for an hour about a movie, I don't know. I guess not us.
Just watch the Turner Classic Movie intros.
Yeah, there you go.
Which I love, by the way, but like, just watch those on repeat.
There you go. I'm sure there are programs. There's programs for everybody. Like, dude, like a third of the world has a podcast now. Everyone's got a podcast.
Yeah, I'm more of a creator than I am a listener, I guess. I barely gotten into the world of like being a podcast listener. I just tried it living in LA and having to deal with the hellish traffic that we have. And it does help. It makes it go by a little faster.
It does. Something about keying into a conversation.
About semen.
But so we're like, where are we at with High Life?
So
are we like anywhere?
I mean, you said you wanted to talk about the end.
Yeah.
The like enveloping golden light that kind of took them over. And I thought it was interesting because every time we had seen the black hole before, it was like this almost grayish, like really like ominous looking beast of a, object. And at the end, it looked warm and welcoming and like ember-like almost. And
I hadn't thought about that.
I don't know. It was just this golden, like amber color that just took them over.
Did you like extrapolate some positivity from that?
I did. I mean,
some hope.
It was one of the most positive scenes in the movie, other than maybe the very beginning when he's like fixing the thing outside and he's like listening to the baby coo and everything. And
that was like, not positive for me. I hate the sound of screaming babies.
Okay, well the screaming was.
Is that Alexa? What the hell was that?
Oh, excuse me.
Do you have an Alexa?
No, it's a Google thing.
Oh.
Well,
That's
ladies and
so
gentlemen, you
weird
just
to
heard
me
the
that-
fourth member of Reel Weirdos.
I don't get it. I don't get those things, man. I don't get, like, maybe this is me being too conspiratorial,
Uh-huh.
but, like, inviting a company to listen to you at all times, it just seems weird.
Yeah.
And if you think that they're not, then, I mean...
Oh, they 100%
Not that they're sitting there like, what is Alex Aber saying, but they could listen if they wanted to.
Oh,
100%.
Yeah, like if you were involved in something and then whatever government agency with the power that be decided to come in and be like, hey, we need the recordings from the past month. They could just go in and find everything because it would be there. There's data somewhere of it, right?
And they'd be like, the Reel Weirdos, you guys need to shut that shit down. It's not acceptable behavior. Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know what I think about the end. I more just wanted to, like, ask you about the end because I had no idea. I was like, all right, I guess the movie's over now. It was one of those.
It definitely ends like that for sure. I mean, they go into the black hole, right? They arrive. Is that the...
That's the inference that I got, yeah.
Okay.
And she seems to think that they'll make it through the other side or something.
Yeah. And then they, like, hold hands or something and go in. I don't... You know, I will say the intelligence level that she showed, like, and the empathy level that she showed was interesting for someone who grew up entirely in, like, a 20 meter by 30 meter steel box and
with no one but your dad,
who was fucking weird. Robert Pattinson.
You would have been
so
way more
in
maladjusted than she was.
Exactly,
Yeah,
that's
she
what I
was
mean. Like when she was
really
like,
well adjusted.
It's cruel. I'm like, you would be almost just as feral as one of those dogs. I feel like. What reference point do you have for all of these things? I mean, there are those images that play, right?
Yeah,
But-
she has like vids from Earth and like some files, but I don't know. It's not a lot.
Yeah,
in this ugly ass environment for like 15 years. Yeah, it's
It didn't bother me. It didn't like ruin the film for me at all. It was just interesting. And then the part that bothered me the most about this movie was actually the disposal of the bodies. Not because I'm like gonna be harping on like, oh, that wasn't scientifically accurate. None of that bullshit. What I
like
really
just drops him off the edge.
Yeah. And I'm like, how is he not getting sucked out of the ship right now? Like, what is this room? Is it like somehow like counteracting the effect or pressures of space? You know,
Man,
like,
and those spacesuits are pretty low budget as well.
there's some parts of the spacesuits that look like they're straight up made out of burlap sacks that would hold rice or potatoes.
Yeah, they look like you should be, I don't know, like spraying some crops while wearing it, not being in space. They're very low tech.
Well, I guess it's better than those orange California Department of Corrections jumpsuits.
Right. It is. It's better than that, I guess. But and I think that's one of the interesting parts about this movie. It's like because some movies that do this, where the narrative isn't cohesive, and a lot of the logical inconsistencies will drive me crazy. And sometimes I'm completely willing to let it go. Like I don't care that things about High Life don't make sense. I don't care that the entire logic of the like construction of the world doesn't make a whole lot of sense other than like, oh, they're sending crims up in these box spaceships for experiments. You're like, okay. Because I guess it's because like you're able to evoke so much like just, I don't know, emotion in me. It's hard even to say what it is, but like there's beauty and horror and what it means to be alive and the whole meditation on these things framed in space. You're literally surrounded by the void, and part of that void looks like a womb. My interpretive brain is just like bursting, and I'm like, fuck yes, even while I'm like desperately uncomfortable through the like sexual agonies that are happening. It's fascinating. It's fucking like fascinating.
A visual essay or like a collage. Rather, which is very A24, rather than like, but
it's like a collage of emotions.
You look at even like Eggers or Ari Aster's films from A24, and I mean, there's plots. They're weird for sure, but there's plots. And this one was like, even I was like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? And not only that, but like, I don't know. It's a cool movie because it provokes you in so many ways, and you can't even really describe why. And that's like the essence of the Reel Weirdos, I feel like. Right? It's like you feel weird. And
it's us not being able to describe why, but trying, just flailing around.
I mean, the movie wasn't huge, and it wasn't marketed that big. It was like $8 million to make, which isn't a lot in today's standards, but it only made around $2 million.
You wouldn't put this in theaters. This plays in weirdo theaters. This is a sexual horror movie without a plot made from a French director.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? This is not... The only thing that would draw people in is Robert Pattinson. And I guarantee you that's why it has negative reviews. People are like, oh, Robert Pattinson in space. And then, like, they'll see it and, oh my God, this one guy was so fucking angry.
No
He
way.
was so angry.
Was he ready
just
for
it's like the angriest review I've ever read. Okay, I'll read you a segment of this. I was looking at this earlier. It's called the review, first of all, is entitled, I'm so angry I want to scream Garbo. But LMAO, I had already completely given up on this movie and was almost certainly going to give it a 1 out of 10. But my curiosity got the best of me. So I kept going so I could get to the end, although I was watching it 6 times speed at many points, which was hilariously fine since there were extensive scenes with no dialogue and an extremely slow pace. That's telling right there that they said that.
Wow.
Anyway, I finally got to the end, and guess what? There is no end! The movie just stops! This is all in caps. Like some movies like doing, it's so weak! I laughed so hard and yelled OMG. I want to give it an imaginary 0 out of 10 rating. Yeah, they talk about sleep and masturbation rooms, but how these scenes, once again in all caps, serve no purpose whatsoever.
6 times speed, though. That's what really caught me. Why that number? Why 6 times?
I guess just to get through it, because that's you get through it faster. But it was hilariously fine because there was extensive scenes with no dialogue, Alex, and extremely slow pace. If your movie's slow and there are moments without dialogue, it's garbage. Oh. It's just fucking garbage. That's what you don't understand, Alex.
I know. See, this is why I'm not a French avant-garde filmmaker.
Yeah, and this is why you watch high-class cinema like Stargate.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Independence Day after
Do we have our switchboard so we can do the pretentious bell?
Oh.
Yeah.
We need Jeff for that.
But like seriously though, like it is disheartening sometimes. But I don't know. Whatever. It has its audience is the thing. It's like it makes sense. Makes sense.
I'm more comfortable with people hating this movie than I am with the fact that people will spend like $750 million at the box office to see, like a Michael Bay
Uncharted
movie. Even Uncharted, like it's gonna make a fuck ton of money. And this movie, High Life, will make you feel things more deeply and more profoundly than any of those other movies will. But it will only make $2 million at the box office. And that's just the way it goes.
It goes into like what your expectations are of movies, right? I feel like we talked about that a little bit ago when we talked about Spielberg.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got into Spielberg, but it's like...
Well, we were talking about the greatest American, modern American directors.
Yeah.
And he has to be one of them.
But how Spielberg changed cinema in the sense that if your film doesn't feel like a little bit like a Spielberg movie, like a little bit of that Indiana Jones, like... that sense of adventure or just like Hollywoodness. I don't know exactly how to describe it other than to call it Spielbergian, where it's like it just has that energy. If your movie's not somehow like that, then people are going to think it's really weird. And this is like really, really, really devoid of that.
If you were trying to be a successful and serious short story author in the 20th century, you had to take from Chekhov. There's like no way around it. And that's almost what Spielberg has done for the masses of people who who go to movie theaters. Spielberg are like, it's about the experience. It's the smell of the fabric of the seats and the popcorn and the guys wearing the funny uniforms that don't fit quite right.
And what they call a rip-snorting adventure.
Yeah, exactly.
Starring Tom Holland.
Exactly. So I can't knock it. I can't knock Spielberg for that because he to be the progenitor of that is
Spielberg's
amazing.
Great.
Yeah, and he's great. His films are great too. But when you have an audience that's so trained and so conditioned to expect movies to be built like that, High Life does not fit comfortably into their palate. And I mean, as someone like you and I, it doesn't fit comfortably into our palate as well, but in a good way, right? It's an uncomfortable film, but you're not going to be munching popcorn watching Juliette Binoche in the fuck box, right?
I mean, this is maybe another pretentious Bill thing, but I said this about the tragedy of Macbeth as well. It's like, this is a literary film. It's like, as somebody whose training and degrees are in literature, like, trust me in spotting this, hopefully. There's so many themes going on here that to say that there's nothing happening, it's like, no, you're just not seeing it. And that's a hard thing to just like quantify, because people are really convinced of their opinions, man. I'm one of them. I'm definitely one of them. It's hard to say exactly why you're right, but you do, right?
Yeah, no, there's
about certain things.
There's something about this film that warrants praise and like critical recognition.
A lot about this film, and the critics recognized it. They definitely did.
Yeah,
it's very high.
If you look at
people have some very interesting reviews. People like analyzing this movie.
If you look at the critical scores and stuff like that, way higher numerical values than the audience or the IMDb scores. I think it has like an IMDb score of like a 4 of a 5.
Always a good sign.
Yeah, that's true.
If critics like something and audiences hate it, it's almost always going to be interesting.
It's such an interesting disconnect too. Like, to be a critic or a serious analyst, I guess, of film, you would think that your opinions and like decisions about the art would kind of track pretty parallel with the audience. But it doesn't.
You would think so. I don't know.
It doesn't.
I think it's that in order to be a critic, you need to like have some schooling in a sense. You understand what cinema is, and you learn like how to construct an argument, which is what writing an essay is. And in order to do those things, you have to like be educated, right? And through educating yourself on how things are constructed, whether that's a movie or an argument in writing, you like learn to deconstruct things. And when you learn to deconstruct things analytically, you can see the things that are happening in films, for instance, like in a much better way than if you've never thought about movies. You're just like, what's this movie saying?
Yeah.
Like, blah, blah, give it to me. Like, boom, boom. Oh, this is boring. There's no dialogue here. Therefore, it's not saying anything. It's like art doesn't have to literally speak to you with words in order to say things. That's why paintings exist. You know, like the paintings exist. They're there. They're not talking at you, but they can convey a lot.
I feel like this happened with Mike Judge and Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill. Because those shows are like on the surface level, they're just comedy, adult cartoon shows, right? But they say so much about American society, and they were saying so much about American society at the time that they were coming out. And there were some people who would turn it on and like they totally expected just like the cheap thrills and laughs of like an adult cartoon. And they were like, this is boring, right? Like, this is too serious. This isn't funny or anything like that. But you deconstruct it, like, and you analyze it like you said you would, and you make arguments about some of the things that they're trying to say, and it makes it so much better. And High Life definitely pushed the edges of like what is acceptable, I guess, to audiences on film as far as narrative structure. But like The Green Knight, you know, it's like almost this strangely disjointed. I don't know. I don't want to say Tarantino disjointed either, because there's a strong thread of plot in Tarantino's films, even though he films them, or like sometimes he plays them out of order.
You're talking about like just with temporality?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
I see 2% of what you're saying. Yeah.
this film was just, I don't know. There are shots and angles that High Life takes that are so unconventional and so untraditional that, like, you don't know where you're looking. It's like you don't know where the carrot is hanging in front of you. You don't know what you're supposed to be chasing.
That's a great way of putting it. It is very disorienting. You're like, what is going on, and what, like, just what? It's a big old what.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated the whole time. Once I settled in and was like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do with me. I watch a lot of movies, and I watch a lot of weird movies too, and like a lot of uncomfortable things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rare even then that the whole time I will sit there in a discomfited state, being like with my mouth open.
Yeah.
And just like being like, what on earth am I watching? And like cringing, dude, when that rape scene happened, I was just like, oh God. Oh, I bumped the mic there. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know. It's I think it's one of the most interesting movies I've seen in the last 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
It definitely is like, it's definitely on that radar for me. And, I have to wonder what, Gaspar Noé thinks about Claire Denis movies. Cause I mean,
You know what? Do you know what, Alex?
What?
Do you know what? I was going to end this by saying that, because you've been talking about this guy forever to me. Gaspar
yeah,
Noé.
I swear you gotta watch him.
I was going to say, our next one that we'll do in a few weeks now, we're going to do Elysium.
Okay.
That one looks interesting, and I was like, me and Alex will do that.
Fuck
That'll be
yeah.
our next one.
All right. But
We'll go in on this, like, that's what it was called, right? Elysium?
that's,
God damn it.
wait, is Elysium the
That's
one
the
with
Matt
Tom
Damon
Cruise?
one.
Or the one with Matt Damon. Yeah.
What? It's a movie. It's called something like Elysium. Hold on. Let me pull up his thing here. We're really fucking professional here. Enter the Void.
Okay, that's what it's
I knew it
called.
wasn't
Yeah.
E. Yeah.
Bad
That one
movie.
looks really interesting.
Okay. Let's fucking do it.
Let's fucking do it. All right. That's us. That's us done for the day, I believe.
But we're back,
Talking
ladies and
abstractedly
gentlemen.
about high life and other things, and being movie nerds, calling out the plebs.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys know what to expect from us by now. But we're back. We'll be back shortly as well with Jeff Casino to talk about The Crow at long last.
Oh, I'm ready.
And with that, we'll see you all in the next one.
Have a good night, everyone.
Peace. Now our podcast is done, and we have to run. We know it is sad, but we had so much fun. Don't be bereft, Jesse, Alex, and Jeff. We'll be back real soon. The Reel Weirdos. We talk about movies for way too goddamn long. Bo 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 bo.